In Brazil, the Superior Electoral Court has declared guilty Bolsonaro and barred him from running for office for 8 years. In France, the number of people arrested throughout the country during the protests against the murder of a teenager by the police forces has reached 875. And also, the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said the main working lines approached by the Kremlin regarding foreign relations. From the headquarters of teleSUR English in Havana, Cuba, this is From the South. I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada, and these are the news. In Brazil, the Superior Electoral Court has declared guilty the former president Jair Bolsonaro and barred him from running for office for 8 years. Jair Bolsonaro is ineligible for the next 8 years. With the vote of Judge Carmen Lucia for the conviction, the partial result in the Superior Electoral Court is 4-1, so the political rights of the former president are withdrawn. The electoral power formed a majority for the conviction. Bolsonaro was denounced for abuse of power and improper use of the media during a meeting with foreign ambassadors in July 2022, a few months before the elections of that same year. In the activity, he made different attacks without evidence to the electoral system. Once the trial is over, Bolsonaro can appeal the decision. And the 66th edition of the Sao Paulo Forum is taking place in the Federal District of Brasilia, with Latin American and Caribbean integration as a main point on the agenda. Our team tells us more from there.
After 3 years of interruption caused by COVID-19 pandemic, the Sao Paulo Forum met again. 270 representatives of leftist parties and social organizations from Latin America, the Caribbean, and the world brought to Brasilia their diversity and a common horizon to build the integration of the region, to protect its nature, peoples, and sovereignty.
Is an organization that exists since 1990, which has composed of the parties of the left and center-left of Latin America and other parties that also participate. Its proposal is to discuss the democratic and popular participation of the left in the electoral and democratic processes of the countries, to unite around banners such as the fight against inequality and hunger and sustainable development.
The meeting returns to Brazil with the downwind as the Workers' Party returns to power. On the opening day, Marco Aurelio Garcia, founder of the forum created in 1990 at the initiative of Lula da Silva and Comandante Fidel Castro, was honored.
When we speak of the economic and political integration of Latin America, we speak above all of conscience, of a conscience that has to be formed, of a thought that has to be created. I humbly believe it is the duty of the left, said Fidel, to create consciousness of the integration of Latin America. No region in the world has as many things as we do. End of quote.
The presence of President Lula served as a weapon to counter the demonization of the forum by the media controlled by the global right.
It would be better off if they call us Nazis, neo-fascists, terrorists, but never communists or socialists. That does not offend us. That makes us proud.
The new wave of progressive governments in the region is considered an opportunity, but also a challenge in which it is no longer enough to win an election. For the roadmap of social struggles, the forum proposed to look forward with small steps.
I believe that the horizon is marked by the unity of our peoples, of our countries. For this, I say that practical steps must be taken materially to fight against the blockade imposed against Cuba, Venezuela, with the wrongly named sanctions, coercive measures against Nicaragua. But I believe that one of the essential tasks is to dismantle the Organization of American States.
The Sao Paulo Forum extends until Sunday, July 2nd, where a resolution of the left will be presented for the urgencies in the region.
Ignacio Lemos y Julia Nasif para teleSUR.
On Friday, Honduran President Xiomara Castro assured her administration is advancing a security plan in all the prisons of the country after the death of 46 prisoners during the violent events of June 20th. On Thursday, Operation Faith and Hope, promoted by the government of Xiomara Castro, continued for the fourth consecutive day with the purpose of guaranteeing the governance of the country's prisons. Honduran armed forces, through the military police of public order, reportedly took control of the prisons of El Pozo and Siria, located in the departments of Santa Barbara and Francisco Morazán. According to the authorities in charge of the operation, they found different prohibited objects such as weapons, ammunition, machetes, and cell phones. And now we move on to other topics because an unprecedented drought affects the flow of Paso Severino Dam in Uruguay. Authorities warned that the flow, which normally supplies fresh water to 60% of the population in the country, could be null if weather conditions persist. Currently, the reservoir has only 2.4% of its total capacity of the vital liquid, so they warned that if the situation continues to worsen, the reservoir could have serious consequences. According to the authorities, this drought has been the worst in the last 74 years.
Fear this disaster, they go to see the lake. They go to see the so-called El Tropiezo Bridge, meaning a bridge that had been underwater for years and years, and now it is a rusty skeleton.
In South Africa, the government reported on Friday that at least 7 people died in the province of KwaZulu-Natal as a result of floods caused by heavy rains that hit the territory. Authorities also said that some 70 houses were completely destroyed and 110 damaged in eThekwini, where 552 residents were affected and 151 lost their homes, while they warned the death toll could rise as search efforts continue. Provincial departmental spokesperson Nonala Dungwulmani pointed out that houses suffered roof damage and collapsed walls. She also advised about risks of damage to roads, electrical and sewage systems. This territory has suffered an increase in the occurrence of this type of weather phenomenon in recent years. In April 2022, devastating floods left some 450 people dead and millions of dollars in losses in the province. Let's take a short break. But remember, you can join us on TikTok at teleSUR English, where you will find the news in different formats, news updates, and more. Other stories coming up. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. On Friday in France, the Minister of the Interior, Gérald Darmanin, announced the number of people arrested throughout the country during the protests against the murder of a teenager by the police forces has risen to 875. According to police sources, most of those arrested are between 14 and 18 years old, and local authorities declared a night curfew in the cities of Clamart, Compiègne, Toulouse, and Lille. In the meantime, and in Paris, public transport stopped running at 9 p.m. The French government reiterated that they will not allow the continuation of demonstrations that cause damage to buildings and disturb public order, and to this end, more than 40,000 troops have been deployed. However, multiple destructions and fires were reported on Thursday night. In this context, on Friday, French President Emmanuel Macron cancelled a press conference scheduled on the sidelines of the European Union summit in Brussels and flew back home, and his country is under massive anti-police protests. Macron arrived for a crisis meeting with the Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne, the Minister of the Interior Gérald Darmanin, and the Justice Minister Eric Dupond-Moretti after leaving the Belgian capital ahead of schedule, following the third night of protests that left hundreds of people arrested and forced more cities under curfew at night. Meanwhile, demonstrations were also reported in Brussels, where police officers confirmed the arrest of 64 people, mostly minors, during the early hours of Friday morning. French Prime Minister Elisabeth Borne stated on Friday that they are pondering all options to restore order in France and noted that they do not discard the eventual activation of a state of emergency. And during an online press conference, United Nations Rights Office spokesperson Ravina Shamdasani said the UN is concerned following the killing of a teenager of African descent by a police officer in France. The sinister has led to violent protests across the country.
We are concerned by the killing of a 17-year-old of North African descent by police in France on Tuesday. We note that an investigation has been launched into alleged voluntary homicide. We call on the authorities to ensure use of force by police to address violent elements in demonstrations always respects the principles of legality, necessity, proportionality, non-discrimination, precaution, and accountability. Any allegations of disproportionate use of force must be swiftly investigated.
In Switzerland, on Friday, a strike paralyzed flights at Geneva Airport for several hours, causing long lines at the beginning of the summer travel season. Nearly 70 flights were cancelled after staff walked off the job over a pay dispute. Takeoff and the landings resumed about 4 hours later as staff guiding planes returned to work, although unionized workers voted to keep the strike going until Saturday. Several international flights from North America and the Middle East had been delayed arriving after the initial strike concluded, according to a tweet from the airport on Friday. The strike was called after the airport's board approved a new pay policy on Thursday that was contested by staff. Numerous police and security personnel were stationed in front of the terminal, and only passengers on flights scheduled for after the initial strike period were allowed in.
Look what's happening at the moment everywhere is an increasing cost for employees with rents, health premiums, inflation, obviously prices rising. We are having more and more difficulty simply getting wage indices to the cost of living. So obviously in such a context, attacking salary mechanism and therefore lowering them when the company is making a profit obviously provokes resistance and staff have no other solution.
And the year-on-year inflation in Germany hit 6.4% in June, according to data released by the country's Federal Statistical Office. Statistics show the country's inflation rate in June picked up after declining for 3 consecutive months, with the core inflation, which is calculated without considering energy, food and tobacco, and alcohol prices, reaching 5.8%, up 0.4% from the previous month. Likewise, food price hikes remained the biggest driver of inflation in the month, rising 13.7% from May. Meanwhile, a study by German credit agency Credit Reform showed the number of German firms who went into insolvency rose in the first half of this year due to the energy crisis, inflation, and rising interest rates. And some UNESCO member states expressed concern about approving the United States' return to the United Nations Cultural Agency after it pulled out abruptly in October 2017.
Systematic attempts by the American administration, especially the Trump, at the Trump time, when they are withdrawn from the Human Rights Council, they withdraw from UNESCO, and that's also something is worrying for us. And we want assurances that once we start all this process, asking the U.S. to come back, not to take that step and to withdraw from UNESCO once again. That will affect the noble cause of UNESCO, and that's unacceptable.
And China on Friday reiterated its firm opposition to Washington supplying weapons to Taiwan after the United States said it planned to sell more than $400 million in ammunition and parts to the island.
To U.S.-Taiwan military ties and U.S. arms sales to Taiwan is consistent and clear. The United States should abide by the One China principle and the provisions of the Three China-U.S. Joint Communique. Stop selling arms to Taiwan, stop creating new causes of military tension in the Taiwan Strait, and stop endangering peace and stability in the Taiwan Strait.
And teleSUR English launches its own videos on demand site for you to go and revisit our interviews, the top stories, the special broadcastings, and more. Just go to the top left corner in our website homepage and click in the video option to access our VOD platform, where you can even revisit this news brief. And now we will have a short break. Stay with us. Welcome back. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov reported on Friday to the international press the perspective and working lines approached by the Kremlin regarding foreign relations. During the press conference, Lavrov said Russian Federation will seek early expansion of the United Nations Security Council thanks to the countries of Asia, Africa, and Latin America. Commenting on the Western accusations against Russia for alleged war crimes and violations of humanitarian law in Ukraine, the Russian minister said that the West has no evidence to that effect. Furthermore, Lavrov noted that Moscow has serious doubts about the suitability of many of the Western leaders, since they are choosing to help Ukraine with weapons at the expense of its own citizens.
Russia has always overcome all its problems, and it is difficult to call them anything more than problem, and it comes out stronger and stronger. It will be the same this time too. Moreover, we feel that this process has already begun.
And the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov announced on Friday that Iran will be formally approved as a member of the Regional Shanghai Cooperation Organization with China, Russia, and Central Asian countries.
Coming meeting of heads of states on July 4th, the full membership of Iran will be approved and a memorandum of commitment by Belarus will be signed, which will also launch the procedure for its full-fledged accession to the Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
And now we move on to the sports. Ecuador will host the Guayaquil Pan American Open 2023, which will take place from July 1st to July the 2nd. In this occasion, more than 200 judoka from 21 countries will participate in the tournament. Likewise, over 100 athletes in the men's category will participate within the under 60, 66, 73, 81, 90, and 100 kilograms matches. Meanwhile, in the women's category, over 90 athletes will compete within the under 48, 52, 57, 63, 70, and 78 kilograms. The Pan American Judo Tournament will give 500 points to gold medal winners that will add up to the classification for the Santiago 2023 Pan American Games that will be held in Chile. And we now welcome our collaborator, Jimmy Castillo, who is in Ecuador for the Guayaquil Pan American Open 2023, where more than 200 judoka will look for a spot to the Santiago 2023 Pan American Games in Chile.
From the south, here in Guayaquil, Ecuador, we are going to be this weekend, Saturday and Sunday, in the Pan American Judo Tournament, which will give the quality of 500 points to the winners of gold medal towards the classification to the Pan American Games in Santiago 2023. We had a chance to talk to the president of the Judo Confederation here in Guayaquil, Mr. Roberto Ibanez, and we have his considerations for our newsreel.
Well, first of all, we're honored that the Pan American Judo Confederation has given the opportunity to host this important event, thanks to President Mr. Carlos Segarra. We're honored to have 21 countries here, about 210 competitors. So it's going to be a good event. We're going to do our best so you guys can feel at home with all the great venues we are today. We're going to host even a big sports venue with a lot of sports here. So not only judo. So we're happy to have all of you here and hope to do our best so you can feel at home.
So more than 200 athletes, 207 judokas will be here in Guayaquil from 21 countries, with the importance of looking for the points for the qualification towards Santiago 2023. Jimmy Castillo from the South, teleSUR.
And on Friday, surfer Chelsea Twash became Barbados' first gold medalist at this year's Central American and Caribbean Games in El Salvador. The 26-year-old had to come from behind in the final after a shaky start and delivered her fifth and sixth waves to put space between herself and the rest of the field. Twash scored 6.93 and 7.1 on the waves to post a winning total of 14.03 for the gold and the overall victory in the women's shortboard division at Playa Punto Roca on the El Salvador southeast coast. Winning the silver medal was Puerto Rico's Havana Cabrero, who scored 12.6, while Mexico's Cholbey Detmerz settled for bronze with 10.3. It was Barbados' second medal at the Games. Earlier this week, Jubali Bridi earned silver in boxing in the men's 51 kilograms weight class. And we continue with more coverage of the Central American and Caribbean Games San Salvador 2023. On the last day of swimming, the Cuban delegation won the gold medal in the women's 4x200-meter freestyle relay. The Cuban quartet, formed by Elisbeth Games, Andrea Becali, Lorena Gonzalez, and Lauren Estrada, won with a time of 8 minutes, 10 seconds, 47 cents. In second place, just 7 seconds shy, Mexico won the silver medal. And Colombia completed the podium with bronze medal with 22 seconds behind the first place. So far in the medal tally, the Mexican delegation dominates the Games with 64 gold medals. Colombia is second with 41 golds, and Cuba secured the third spot with a total of 34 golden medals. And with this amount of action, we have come to the end of this news brief. But remember, you can find this and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And also, if you feel so inclined, please join us on social media for all the latest news. We are on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Telegram, and TikTok. For TeleSUR English, I'm your anchor, Gladys Quesada. Thank you for watching.